Okay, so let's start talking about benchmarking. So far we've characterized our needs, right? Perhaps we've done some surveys, we've interviewed people. Now what we're going to do is we're going to see what solutions, and partial or complete, right? What I mean by that is you rarely ever find somebody who's done exactly what you want to do that fulfills all of these needs, but you might find people that have solved one of your needs or two of your needs. A great example of this is Dyson, right? You guys all know his vacuums, which have that whole swirl technology thing. I don't know what he talks about. They go ooh, and then down. Anyway, these Dyson vacuums, right? What's the point of a vacuum? What's the need of a vacuum? The point of a vacuum is to separate dust and particulates from the air, right? So what Dyson did is he said, all right, who else separates dust and particulates from the air? And it turns out industrial people, industrial processes need to do this all the time, and they've established a very good method for doing that, and that's basically the method that the Dyson vacuum uses. And he miniaturized it and has made a ton of money. So the point is that any solution in any industry, partial or complete, we need to figure out if there are solutions out there and if we can learn from these solutions, right? We like to think of design as this creative process. I mean, it is a creative process. But creative processes benefit from experiencing other solutions. I don't know a good way to say this. But a lot of the creative process is you putting together things you've seen before in unique and different ways, right? So the more things you can experience, the better your creative process is going to be. And so in that sense, you should be benchmarking constantly. If you're in an industry like whatever industry you're in, you should be constantly trying to figure out what your competitors are doing, and not even competitors, but people who are in completely different industries but still trying to solve the same problem. How are they trying to solve it? This is how trade magazines even start, right? So anyway, we're going to be benchmarking. So the question is why do we do this? Let's talk a little bit about that. Why? So why do we do this? One, looking at existing products can help you figure out needs you haven't thought of. We've talked about how hard figuring out needs is, right? Well, that's not even close to being of. How hard figuring out needs is. You have to go to all these different sources, and even then you might not see everything. But if you go to a competitor's product, and you look at one of the features on there, and you're like, oh, that's to prevent somebody's hand from getting chopped off. I didn't even think about that. Well, suddenly, you've won, right? You have won. So demonstrate needs you haven't thought of. 2, what else? Why else might you do this? It can help you come up with engineering functions, which is what we're going to do next after benchmarking. Help you come up with engineering functions, right? Coming up with engineering functions is also really difficult. And coming up with a range of important engineering functions is also difficult. So if you notice there's a feature on, again, a feature on somebody's packaging. Let's say you're buying a fan, right? If you're buying a fan and you notice all these fans talk about the flow rate that they're capable of producing, well, then flow rate is an important engineering function, right? And finally, 3, it helps with the creative process, like I talked about. It helps with the creative process. The more things you see, the better it is, right? If you were raised in a blank room your entire life, you would never figure out how to make an internal combustion engine, right? The history of human progress is built on these incremental kind of recombination of different ideas. All right, so it helps the creative process. And four as well, you do have to worry about intellectual property, right? So if there are patents on the product, or patents that you need to be worried about that you don't want to infringe upon, you have to know about those. If there's an opportunity to get patents, you want to know about that too. Those are worth a lot of money. Great. So, this is important, clearly. Let's talk a little bit about how we do it. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at the various needs that you have, and you're going to look for companies or products that are best in class for those. For those needs, right? Best in class for needs that you have developed. Like I said, this can be very diverse. We talked about Dyson. Let's say you need to pick something up. What picks things up? Well, cranes pick things up. So figure out different ways cranes pick things up. Keep your options really open here. Don't just look in the narrow field of the products that you're trying to compete with, right? Although you should benchmark those as well. Again, you should do this for a range of products because it's really important to mention this. It's very unlikely that any one product, no one product is going to be the best for every need you have developed. Right? For a variety of reasons. One, their needs that they started out with for their design process were probably different. Two, as we'll find out, the design process, you're trying to balance all these different needs, and it's not a scientific process, right? We try to make it as much as we can, but it's not. So sometimes you end up with compromises that you're not happy with. As a result, not every product is best for all. No one product is going to be best for every need that you have developed. So your goal is to find for every need some kind of best-in-class solution for it, right? And then for those products, what you're going to want to do, we change our zoom here. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to write down for each single one a couple different things, right? One, what features or functions, right, are most important for end user let's just say user satisfaction, right? We can give you an example of we can make a lot. Spaced off there. There are a lot of examples of this. Let's say you're doing car seats, right? Let's say you're trying to develop a car seat, a safety seat. What features are most important for your satisfaction? Well, who is using this? A child and a parent, right? So the child needs to be comfortable. They don't want to be crying constantly. But also, there's a lot of features in a car seat to prevent a child from wiggling out. and to make it easy to take it in and out. Is that a coincidence? No, it's because those features and functions are very important for the satisfaction of the user, the parent, and for the child. But whatever. All right. In addition to that, after you've figured out, this is figuring out needs, right? You're trying to figure out additional needs. 2, you're going to figure out what features and functions are most important for the technical success of product. Right? So these are features, again, these are features that help for the technical success of the product. So these are features that help this product meet what you think its engineering functions are, right? So you're kind of doing some guesswork here. You don't know what those engineering functions are, but you're trying to guess what features help it do that. So again, with car seats, if one of the leading car seats has this innovative buckle system that makes it easy to strap into a seat, you know that helps it with ease of getting in and out, right? No, we don't need to write that down. So these are technical success of the product, engineering functions. These are buckles. These are, make it cheap to manufacture. This, as you're walking around, now that you're mechanical engineers, it's very helpful to start looking at things from the point of view of a mechanical engineer. Why would they do that? Why is that feature there, and how does it help the technical success of a product? It's also fun to walk around and try to figure out how different things are made, right? There's a lot of clues usually in an object that tell you how it was made. Great. In addition to that, my zoom keeps changing. In addition to that, we're going to try to figure out what features cost the most to implement, right? Which features cost the most to implement? This takes some guesswork too, right? You have to figure out how they made it, why they made it, how much it might cost to develop, and that tells you how oftentimes this is how important it is, right? A measure of importance. If a feature is very costly and it's still in there, this was probably a pretty important feature. Important to figure out why. Was it important for the technical success of the product? Did it make people happy? Cost, yes. 4, you want to write down what features differentiate this product from competitors, right? Again, the goal is here to figure out what features are important. What features are important. 5, what functions would you improve? What features, functions, interchangeable. Right? What could you do better? Or maybe not what you could do better, but what could use improvement, right? 6. Now that you've done all that, what you want to do is you want to establish metrics for evaluating the most important features. Not all the features, but the ones that you have determined through these steps up here, the most important ones for customer satisfaction, the most important ones for engineering functions. If they're costly, they're probably important. Figure out that too. If they differentiate a product for the competitors, that means they're important, right? If features could be improved, that's an opening for you to target in your marketing, right? So you want to establish metrics for evaluating these most important features, all right? What does this mean when we say metrics? This means something we can measure. Figure out how you can measure that feature, right? This should sound very similar to something else that I have said needs numbers, right? This is very similar to engineering functions, right? Very similar to engineering functions. So, you're going to establish metrics for evaluating those most important features, and then you want to see how well they actually meet, right? So they may have this function, this feature that you've determined is very important. How well do they actually do at that function? You're going to evaluate product. Now, this might involve research, right? You might do some performance testing on your own. You might buy the competitor's product and actually just use it to see how well it does, to test it in a rigorous environment. But the main thing here is to figure out how well do they actually do at this. And then, as always, we need to figure out how to disable that. We need to generate a report that summarizes the findings. Great. So, not all of these steps will work, right, for everything that you do. I talked about how Dyson used an industrial process to inspire his work, right? So he probably benchmarked that industrial process. But it's not the exact same. For him, he's not going to care about what features differentiate that product for his competitors because that industrial process's competitors are not the same as his, necessarily. Although kind of, right? So what's the advantage of using just centrifugal force to force particles out of airflow? One, you don't need fiber filters, right? So what are your maintenance costs? Or, not maintenance costs, what would you call that? And probably maintenance costs. What are your ongoing costs with a centrifugal particle filter? They're very low, right? Very low. So that's something that differentiates you from something like a fiber filter, right? A fiber filter, every time it fills up, you have to go in there, you have to stop your process, you have to replace it. It's expensive. So the point is, though, is to go through and use these to try your best to answer these questions so that you can learn as much as you can from these competitor products. And then summarize it all together at the very end. What are their most important features? What are their most important solutions to needs? And then how well do those solutions, and this is an important step here, you can't just determine what their solutions are. How well do those solutions actually meet those needs? And of course, this is why this is a writing class. We generate a report to summarize our findings. All right, and one thing I want to mention before the end is that patents are a good source of information, right? How do you spell that? Patents. A good source of information. One, to let you know what you can't do, or maybe what you can do, but you have to license, right? If there are no patents, that's good to know because then that gives you an opportunity to patent whatever solution you come up with. Great. So next time we're going to talk about developing our engineering functions.